Come satisfy your appetite for wealth with baking profits. Now, here's your hosts, Mike and Brad.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to another week of Baking Profits. We're your hosts, Mike, aka DeFi Donut.
And I'm Brad, aka the Bread Maker.
And today we're going to be talking about traditional finance versus decentralized finance. We're going to dive into the importance of keeping trade logs, and we're going to wrap it up with some developments in BreadBytes. And if you'd like to, you can follow the crumbs on our socials at Baking Profits, at BreadBytes, at Breadmaker, at DeFi Donut.
And be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
And today we're drinking Angel's Envy, and it's pretty damn smooth.
This one's good. This isn't like an I.W. Walker situation from last week.
Ooh, yeah. And you know what? I would say shout out to the co-CEO here of Astrobit for putting us onto this.
Yeah, Lindsay. Yeah, he was. He recommended this, or I think did we drink it at Consensus?
We did.
So I thought we did. Yeah, and it's pretty damn good. Where would this rank on the list so far from all our podcasts for you, at least?
I'm saying, Jefferson's has been my favorite, but I think Angel's Envy is definitely topping it.
I might go with this Hirsch one. I don't know what it was about that Hirsch one. It was pretty freaking good. But this Angel's Envy, it's close.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a close call. I don't know. It's one or the other.
I would argue that if you look at the bottle and how much we've drank compared to every start of every episode, I would say that we drink more Angel's Envy than anything else.
Yeah, this episode is going to be wild because we already pounded this whole bottle back already, like over the last few hours. So I'm not exactly sure how this episode's going to go, but it's going to be interesting.
It'll be good times
for sure.
All right, so we wanted to start off, talking about some of the things that have been happening recently in the news and really comparing traditional finance to the perks, the pros and cons of decentralized finance. So, I know one of the things that we talk about pretty often, especially in our bot community, is we talk about the volatility and just how the volatility in crypto is, it's insane. We might see some of that with, some of the meme stocks or Tesla, but for the most part, the volatility in the stock market, it's pretty even keeled. Most people who want like crazy action will trade options, but I would feel like traditional options are pretty cookie cutter when it comes to the degen side of crypto.
Yeah, I think a lot of the reason we came over to crypto from traditional finance is mainly because of the volatility and the opportunity that it presented. I think, you're seeing on a traditional, side of things, if you're able to capture, a 0.5% move or a 1% move in an asset, that's a pretty good gain. When we traded penny stocks, we were, a 1 or 2% gain. We were like, dude, that was a sweet trade.
Yeah.
That was a sweet ass trade. And like on the crypto side, it's like, Bitcoin and Ethereum move that daily. And then most of the altcoins are moving, 3, 4, 5, 8, 10%. We just saw, this craziness with Binance happen and all the altcoins drop like 20% on a 5-minute candle. Yeah. You're not seeing that kind of stuff happen in traditional finance. So, which it can be good and bad. Obviously, you can get burned very easily in crypto, but you also, it goes back to that, risk reward side of things is, the risk and reward is much higher in crypto. And it's just like if the people that are educated and the people that know what they're doing, they can capitalize on the reward side of it while also maintaining the risk aspect of it.
Yeah. I think of trading when we're talking about the differences between traditional and decentralized trading is just one aspect of it. But I think there's so many other avenues that traditional finance blocks the average person getting into that, DeFi has the opportunity to show up and be like, hey, you know what, we're going to take the torch from here. But the biggest thing that comes to mind is just the fact that, it's credit. It's credit checks. There are people out there that make plenty of money in order to, get a credit card loan or whatever. They make enough money, but because of this scoring that has, was created 100 years ago, it's basically stating like, no, you're not qualified to be able to get this loan. DeFi has the opportunity to solve that problem. It's like, yes, maybe you made some bad mistakes when you were 18 years old and you were going to college and there were these Visa, MasterCard booths sitting outside your, history class and saying, hey, you could get $2,000 for free if you just sign up right now. And of course, like what college student is going to sign up and you're like, oh, I'm going to put, subs in my car or something stupid. So maybe you make one stupid decision, you decide, I'm not going to pay that off, and your credit is ruined for 15, 20 years. And it's like, should we really be penalizing? Because at 18 years old, are you responsible enough to be making these financial decisions?
Not really.
Exactly. So in my mind, I think traditional finance, it really caters to the older generation, the people who have been in the market the longest. It protects those individuals more than younger individuals. And I think it's just kind of like, when you think about it from like a fraternity thing, it's like, oh, well, everybody has to get hazed, right? Like, I went through it. My grandpappy went through it. You're going to have to go through it.
Yeah.
It kind of sucks.
Yeah. I think there's an opportunity there from the decentralized side of things to not have to, kind of jump through those hoops to get to the point you want to get to. Like, you're trying to go from A to B, and there's like all these other steps that you have to go through on the traditional side to be able to get through those. I feel like I'm a perfect example of that. When I was 18, I got a credit card. I remember it was a Capital One credit card, and I got this card. I got a $500 or $1,000 credit limit or something like that. I was 18, didn't know shit about shit, and I saw that Walmart had some deal on a DLP like backlit old school TV, and it was a 55-inch TV, and it was like $500 or $600, and it was normally like $1,100. I was like, I'm putting this thing on my credit card. Bought it, put it in my room, started playing video games. I was like, this is freaking legit. Didn't pay my credit card at all. I was like, this is free money. I'm just like, I can buy whatever I want, do whatever I want, and I don't have to pay it. And then next thing I know, that card went to collections somehow or another, between fees and all the other crap. It ended up being like $2,500 in charges, and my credit score was getting slammed. And, I had to spend years building it all back up and fixing it all. And on the decentralized side, you could probably just go in and get a loan or borrow with some of these different, DeFi, borrowing and lending companies that are already out there. And they don't look at any of that shit. They don't care necessarily what your credit score is, what you've had happen in the past. You can go in and do these different things without having to jump through 40 hoops just to get to the, from A to B that you originally wanted to get to.
Yeah. There is pros and cons to that, because you do invite those people who are like, oh, I'm going to buy this TV and never make a payment. And that is on the other party, the secondary party, who is like, you know what? I have looked at this individual and I want to take this risk because my reward is going to be worth the risk that I'm taking. So, and I kind of believe that a majority of people want to do the right thing. When we talk about, kids who are 18, 19, those are the dumbest human beings on the planet.
Yeah.
Especially males, right? Like we're going after very specific things that we want to go after, and we make dumb decisions and very irrational and emotional decisions. And I think at that age, it's like, I think that the traditional finance, it really just penalizes those individuals who are taken advantage of. And I think another aspect of DeFi that could really help is, and when I think of the way I've explained DeFi to outsiders, is like, it's not necessarily catered to, for instance, American citizens, because as a U.S. citizen, we have access to the best traditional finance opportunities that we possibly can. But if you put yourself in a third world country, or you put yourself as maybe somebody who is migrating over from Mexico into America. Maybe they're doing it illegally or whatever. It doesn't matter. But they can't go to their bank. First off, they can't even go to a bank. Let's just start there.
Yeah.
They don't have a bank account. But let's just say they do get access to a bank. They're not going to get access to the investment opportunities that I have access to. More than likely, they can't legally get a job. Well, that means they can't invest in a 401k. They can't invest for the future. So what are they doing? They're holding cash. And we know holding cash, especially right now with inflation, terrible idea.
Yeah, not ideal.
Yeah. So that means they can't properly save. That means that they're having to really create a budget based off of cash. And I think the majority of people who hold cash tend to spend cash and they don't properly save and they don't have a way to, protect themselves for the future or their kids or whatever. And so when you get access to DeFi and you see like, oh snap, I can create a savings account, I can earn interest, I could stake Ethereum and I can earn interest on that, which I mean, to be honest, I've earned more interest off of my staked Ethereum than I did in my savings account through traditional finance. And that's not even including anything that has been gained or lost from the value of Ethereum itself. So I personally think that DeFi caters to the individuals who are really not in traditional finance right now, and it's a great gateway for them to get into the investment world.
Yeah, I mean, I think those that don't have the access to that, like, the average American, I guess, does, there's a high benefit to the DeFi side of things and being able to, move money into there and maybe get some of their money out of cash, which is getting inflated upon, and, move that money into a Bitcoin or an Ethereum or stake it or put it into a DeFi protocol or a trading bot or whatever it may be that could generate more money on their existing money is obviously super beneficial. I'm curious to know, do you know what percent you were making on that Ethereum? Ballpark?
I think it was like almost 7%, I think.
Okay, that's pretty damn good. Because I was going to play the devil's advocate a little bit, and with all these different high yield savings accounts that are popping up all over the place, I mean, a lot of them are offering 4% plus, and in my opinion, I'm like, that's pretty safe and that's pretty good, returns, especially coming from an average savings account, which you're getting like 0.01%, or 0.1%.
But you
really
gotta
not getting
get
anything
approved for that account.
True, you have to be able to get a bank account.
And I mean, if you can't get a bank account, then you're not getting access to this. And to be fair, like, looking back, I don't think I would have had to show anything to stake Ethereum, especially if you do so, in a decentralized way. I could just buy my Ethereum and immediately stake it and I could be earning interest. And that's not including all the crazy lucrative pools. And don't get me wrong, like there could be mistakes made here, especially if you're, maybe you're just a hardworking, father of two, you're married, whatever. And it's like, you don't have the time to figure out what investments are right for you. You could be susceptible to essentially like all of these bad decisions that other people are telling you, like, hey, you should do this, you should buy Pepe and you should stake it and you could do this. And it's like, okay, at the time it might sound great, but was it a great idea? No.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, when it comes down to it, the traditional finance versus decentralized finance side of things, I think DeFi is obviously still a larger and more viable opportunity from a risk versus reward standpoint. It kind of goes back to the beginning of what we talked about from traditional finance versus DeFi. Is part of the reason we moved over into crypto primarily was due to the volatility and due to the potential percent differences or gain or risk versus reward essentially that crypto offered versus traditional finance. And I think when we come to this savings account side of things and we talk about the different opportunities or challenges that presents, with the returns versus the staking side of things on the crypto side, there's definitely still a very interesting risk versus reward factor from a traditional finance to a decentralized finance side of things. I know myself, I moved over a lot of my money into a SoFi account, which is a more online based bank that offers a 4% plus return on savings. I feel comfortable with that. It's FDIC insured. I feel like my money is protected, whereas in DeFi, there's a higher risk. Doesn't necessarily mean I don't invest and stake and do those things in DeFi, but I do think the traditional finance side of things is, leaning more into that high yield type of stuff. And I wonder if that's just the way they're going in general, or is that influenced by crypto and the fact that crypto has the staking opportunities? And maybe, we already obviously know that the government in general is trying to, at least in the US specifically, is trying to curb the crypto thing. And it's like maybe these banks are seeing the same thing, and they're like, hey, if we can offer more enticing returns, we can get people out of crypto and back into banks.
Yeah, I mean, I was about to pose the same question. It's is crypto influencing traditional finance?
I think to an extent, for sure.
I mean, I think that the banks and the financial institutions were making shitloads of cash, and they realized, like, the average person, they're wanting to make a little bit more than what they've been making this entire time. Let's cater to that. And they can afford that because they're making shitloads of cash.
Oh, yeah. Big
off
time.
Of fees. Like, I mean, there was a time in my life where my wife and I, we barely, met ends meet, and we had to go and get, the Visa gift cards, where it's like you go to the grocery store, you buy a Visa gift card, that's going to overdraft your account. But if you overdraft your account, with, $20 versus $2,000, it's the same overdraft fee. So we would just max out a Visa gift card at $500, take care of our groceries, maybe pay a bill, and wait till I got paid again. And that's like us at 19 years old, making dumb decisions because we didn't have anybody there that said, hey, whoa, you need a budget, you need to do this, that, or whatever. But in our minds, we were thinking like, okay, if the banks are going to charge us these fees, we got to play their game. And it's like, what is the least amount of fees that we can pay? And so it always frustrate me because I'm thinking like, they're just charging us fees for moving numbers on a computer screen.
Yeah.
I mean, the dollar has been digital for years. And the whole push of the government now, it's like, yes, they're really wanting to show an example right now. They are taking all available options to get our money out. They're pulling these strings, and they're trying to play their hand. And I think in the end, of course, they're going to win. I mean, there's going to be a compromise. It's going to be in their favor. But I do think if you're a US citizen and you're trading crypto, I don't think it's going to be as bad as we think it is, because right now it's it's pretty bad comparing to other countries. And I think anything that happens beyond this is going to be positive for the US investor. It's going to be positive for, the entire crypto space in whole, because we're probably going to get more adoption out of it. And whenever things kind of level out, I think ultimately it's going to drive more people into crypto. But again, though, it's like who's going to be taken advantage of during this entire time?
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be an interesting situation and how that plays out. I know, kind of like what you shared with the Visa gift card story. I had a similar story, and hearing your story now, I'm like, that was way smarter than what I was doing. I was going to fast payday loans. Got caught up in that shit, man. So,
oh my God.
I would always, the way my paychecks were landing at my job when I was like, I don't know, 19, 20, I was like, it would land on a week that was like after all my bills came in. So I'm like, I can't pay for this. So I would go to fast payday loans, get like, I was usually like somewhere between $500 to $1,000. But dude, the next week I would have to pay, I think it was like 11% on that money in like a week later. So I was getting straight gouged. I went through that for like a year, basically, almost like bi-weekly. Bi-weekly or monthly, I would get a fast payday loan out to pay my bills, and then use my next paycheck to pay off the fast payday loan plus the interest. And I'm like, damn. I'm now hearing your story. I'm like, I should have just freaking done your idea and taken the overdraft fees and overdrafted my account and then gone that route. But yeah, when it comes to the crypto side of things, I think, in my opinion, it's gonna get bad before it gets better. But I know, in my opinion, the governments are really doing a good job, in their opinion, and in my opinion, I guess, of cutting off as many on-ramp opportunities for crypto as possible, at least in the US. Specifically in the US, they're trying to do everything they can to prevent people from being able to put money into crypto, because I think their mindset is like, hey, if we can prevent people from putting money into crypto, it's going to stop crypto altogether. Yeah. But the problem is, I don't think they're ever going to be able to fully do it. I mean, they got you got PayPal and you got Venmo and you got Cash App and you got all these other Robinhood and these other places that are allowing you to accept crypto and then send crypto, elsewhere to, whether it's like a MetaMask wallet or an exchange or whatever it may be. And those specific scenarios, I'm not exactly sure how they're going to shut those down. I don't think they're going to be able to shut down Robinhood or a PayPal or a Venmo. Like, they're not going to be able to shut those things down. They can shut down these exchanges that are in the U.S. or make them not allowed to be operated in the U.S. I think they can do that, but there's always going to still be other ways to on-ramp crypto within the U.S. And then I think ultimately, in my opinion, I think the trading platforms that are out there in traditional finance, I think they're going to eventually be able to adopt crypto once regulation hits. Like, I think the E-Trades and the TD Ameritrades and the Fidelities and the Tasty Trades and all these different exchanges that are in traditional finance, I think once regulation hits, they're going to, the floodgates are going to open into where they can now trade assets and you can invest money into trading crypto, and it's going to be easier to on-ramp in those scenarios. But I think right now it's kind of like a get worse before it gets better type of situation, and I think that's where we lie currently.
Yeah, I mean, people talk about Binance being the big dog. Imagine when an E-Trade, Charles Schwab, or something like that says, hey, hold my beer, we're introducing crypto to the goddamn world. I mean, it's going to be wildly different because they manage, ungodly amounts of money, and people have to put that money somewhere. And ultimately, at the end of the day, they're going to be there's every year there's 20-year-olds looking to invest in extremely high risk. I mean, even myself, I'm mid 30s, and of course, some of my portfolio needs to be high risk. And it's acceptable to be high risk. If I'm 62, no, of course, I would not want to put anything into crypto. I would want things to be ultra safe. But there's always going to be 36-year-olds. Every year, there's a whole new batch of us. And that type of money going into crypto is going to ultimately be great long-term, especially for companies like us and BreadBytes and things like that. I do think it is going to change the ecosystem a bit, but that just happens with time. I mean, how many people, whenever Robinhood decided, you know what, we're just going to do free trading fees, how many true investors and brokers and people that were just, making tons of money off of these poor souls that over all these years were probably like, man, that sucks. Like, this is terrible. This is gonna be the end of stock trading. When really it was kind of like a new beginning, and it introduced so many young people. I've had so many conversations with very young people who are in trading because of Robinhood. And even though I don't like Robinhood, I think they've done a lot of shysty things. I cannot deny that they are a game changer, and I'm extremely appreciative of Robinhood, even though I do not like them. I know it's weird to say, but I think it was necessary. They came in and they did what nobody else could do, and they forced these old monopolies to essentially be like, shit, we got to do free trades.
Yeah, no commissions.
That's impressive.
Yeah. I mean, that is impressive that they were able to pull that off. I mean, I think, they have other ways of obviously generating revenue outside of that. And that's where things get a little interesting in the way that they're collecting money through different various methods. But, I think at the end of the day, they did change the game. They allowed you to trade from your phone, and they really allowed the, 18-year-old person to come into it. I mean, I've seen, over the years, I've seen people that are in their 20s that have made generational wealth through trading, whether that's luck or skill or whatever it may be. That would have never been possible in the past. You never heard of people doing that in the past because the old ways of doing things and the commissions and all the stuff that you had to do and the hoops you had to jump through, it was really not that possible to pull anything off like that in the traditional finance space. So, I think, that is a very monumental feat, and it really changed the space from a trading aspect, over the last, probably about 7 or 8 years now. I think Robinhood came out probably in 2015-ish, 2016-ish maybe. So,
all blends together.
Last 6 to 8 years, they've really changed the game, and investing in general, even outside of crypto, has significantly changed. The landscape of it has significantly changed over the years. I know you spent a second talking about one thing where it was talking about the risk based off your age. I'm curious to know, this is kind of a little bit off topic, but I'm curious to know, what do you think the age limit is on a risk? From like like if you're in your 30s, obviously you have a little bit more availability to take a larger risk. Even in your 20s, let's say you're talking about your 401k or whatever, maybe you're trading Vanguard funds or whatever it may be, Roth IRAs, anything like that. Where do you think the risk cutoff is to where you got to de-risk yourself as much as possible prior to, your retirement? Let's just say average retirement age is 65. So let's just say 65 is you're going to retire at 65. Where is the age that you feel comfortable cutting yourself off from a risk standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think if you have prepared yourself from the beginning, then there is no cutoff. You should always have risk because you should always be thinking about the next move. And I think like when I'm 92 years old, hopefully I live that long, and I'm thinking about not investing for myself, I'm investing for my grandchildren at that point or my great-grandchildren. I'm trying to create generational wealth. So in my opinion, I think, I have been investing since I was almost 21 years old. Hopefully, when I'm looking at just my 401k alone, no investments outside of that, before I'm 65, I should long be able to retire, hopefully. When I am 65, I don't want to just be like, okay, well, I'm going to call it quits and I'm going to take it the easy route. I want to have, yes, a majority of that in a very like safe, like bonds, things that are not really going to produce very much money. But I would like to say I would at least have 25% in more higher risk opportunities. Things that I know, like, okay, if I lost this 25%, I'm still great and groovy. Everything is awesome. But if this 25% happened to do something amazing, now I've set up a whole nother generation of my, lineage for success. And, there's always going to be these opportunities like Amazon and, Apple and Microsoft and Nvidia or Bitcoin or Ethereum, whatever. Every generation has the opportunity to get into these things. And that's why I have the mindset of like, I would like to get in as many things as possible now, things that I believe long term, like when we think about, if I'm going to buy, so if I'm thinking about the future right now, like if we had to actually think about the future and what is going to be, we're going to see a lot of AI. We're going to see a lot of, people are worried that there's going to be job replacements, whether that becomes with just like, maybe the trucking industry being replaced with automated driving, or if it comes like with Chat GPT, when it's like it's replacing, whatever. I mean, like lawyers, marketing, whatever.
A lot of stuff.
So when I think about that, I think, okay, well, what companies are leading the way? And I mean, I can't help but deny that NVIDIA, in a sense, has its hands. It's in a lot of future-proof opportunities because its technology will be involved in the movement of AI in one way or the another. And same with Intel and AMD, whatever. There's these companies, I think, have a lot of future opportunities. So when I think about that long term and I think about these industries and these sectors, if I invest in them, now, I think it's the return on it is going to allow me to have the opportunity to be able to take some high risks when I'm 65 and waiting to retire. So I know that was a long-winded answer, but you know what I mean? Like, I hopefully I never have to manage my risk.
I'm still waiting on the year.
I mean,
yeah, I'll go, and then maybe you'll have a better
maybe
idea of what your number.
The question.
In my opinion, the age in which you have to de-risk yourself is 58.
Wait, what?
58 is the number in my opinion. So if you are planning on retiring at 65, you need to move your money around a little bit at about 58 to de-risk your profile a little bit, because there's always that chance of a bear market coming or something like that. And if you're in a Vanguard fund and you got all your money in there and the S&P 500 drops 35% and you got a handful of millions of dollars that you've stacked up over 20, 30 years, you're going to get fucked. Yeah. So even if, at that point, if you've got some crypto ETFs and, Vanguard funds and you got all kinds of stuff, you got to de-risk that at a level, in my opinion, 7 years prior to your retirement age is the ideal way to do it, because at that point, more than likely, anything that happens at that 7-year mark or after is you're going to recoup it if there's any craziness that happens market-wise. And more than likely, you're not going to be in a bear market for 7 years.
So are you putting an age cap on crypto investments?
This is more of like a general risk. Just a general risk of like whatever you're investing in my opinion, at the age of 58, you should try and de-risk as much as possible if your goal is to retire at 65. There's a 7-year window, in my opinion, that you need to attempt to de-risk before you reach 65. If your ultimate goal is I'm retiring at 65 and you've invested in your 401k and you've got this Vanguard fund, you've got Roth IRAs, and you got this money in all different places prior to maybe in your 20s, like you said, or you're going to start investing in your 30s or 40s or whatever it may be, and you've been building this like nest egg.
Yeah.
58 is the number, in my opinion, where you have to start understanding that, hey, I'm 7 years away from retirement. I can't have a 30 or 40% drawdown on my retirement account that I'm planning on retiring from, because if I do that, it may push my retirement from 65 to 68, or may push my retirement from 68 to 72, something like that, where if you're 58 and you've got a 7-year buffer in a way, and you're able to be like, all right, I'm going to move some of this into bonds, some of this into this. I'm not going to make as much on a year-over-year basis, but I'm also not going to potentially put myself at risk for losing much, which could potentially prolong my retirement age.
Yeah. So did you come up with this 7 years based off the fact that we, in traditionally U.S. markets, experience a bear market once every 7 years?
This was not really, because my thought is like you're not gonna be in a bear market for 7 years. Hypothetically, more than likely, the chances of the market dropping 40% when you're 58 years old and then you still somehow being down 7 years later, extremely slim to probably impossible. I don't have the exact data to back that up 100%. But my thought is, if you're at 58, if you're like, you know what, I've been making consistent money for 20 plus years. I've been investing in my 401k, my Roth IRA. I've got this money sporadically here and there. It's time to make this a very safe investment, so that I know when I'm 65, even if I'm making just a couple of percentage points a year, instead of 8 to 12% a year, I'm making 2 to 4% a year for the next 7 years.
Yeah.
I at least know that when I get to 65, I'm hitting my target and I'm bouncing. Whereas if I stay in high risk, there's always a possibility that maybe when I'm 64, a bear market hits and I lose 40% of my account. I'm like, shit, I can't retire. I don't got enough money. Now I got to stay working for a few more years because I didn't de-risk myself 7 years ago to prepare for the potential of something happening. Like, think about the people, I don't even really know if we're technically in a bear market anymore. It's kind of weird.
At all-time highs.
Yeah. So, but let's say, COVID years, or maybe like fast or rewind like 3 to 6 months ago, and you're 65 years old and you're in a Vanguard fund and you see, the S&P 500 drop 25%. That could fuck you. You could be like, shit, dude, I can't retire now. And so that's why I'm like, you got to de-risk about 5 to 7 years prior to make sure that you're on par and ready to go for retirement. I know this really doesn't have anything to do with crypto, but I just was curious what your thoughts were.
Yeah, I mean, I have an actual example for this. One of my best friend's moms, they were set to retire about 2018, maybe 2019. I mean, it kind of all blends together now. And I had asked her at the time. I remember we were we were out at a brewery, and we were outside, and we were drinking like it was like a special beer or whatever. I don't know, but it's created this memory for me. But I remember asking her, I was like, "Hey, like, things aren't looking so great." And this is before COVID. So it's even crazier now that I think about it. And I haven't really thought about it until you started talking. But I asked her, I was like, you're about to retire, like within 6 months. What if something bad happens? Like, because at the time she had told me, like, I really didn't start investing in a 401k until I was later on in life. And I said, well, what happens, if shit hits the fan and you've retired and, we see a recession. And I remember her response at the time. I mean, it's typical, like, one part, but she was like, oh, well, Trump will take care of me. And it was kind of like, at the time I was like, what? Like, I didn't quite understand what the hell she was talking about. But of course, I mean, now that we see it, and I feel bad because I never really got a chance to follow up on this, but we kind of saw shit hitting the fan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I never really thought about that until just now, but I'm like, she basically retired in 2018 or 2019, and she just assumed the US government would take care of her when shit hit the fan. And then we literally saw shit hit the fan. And I kind of wonder for those people like who retired in 2018 to 2021 period, like, oh my God, that would have been so
Crazy.
fucking scary. Yeah. I would be shitting my pants. I would not want to retire during that time. I would have no faith that, I mean, even right now, I would have very little faith of saying, like, I trust the remainder years of my life with the situation that we're in right now.
Yeah. It's not macroeconomics, not a great situation that we're currently in. So, obviously I think at some point in time it'll get better. I mean, historically, if you look at the last 100 years, things consistently go up. But a lot of it comes down to timing, honestly. Like, if you were planning on retiring in, February or March of 2020, and you saw the market drop 35% in a single month, and you got most of your money in an S&P 500 fund, you're sitting there like, I can't retire. I just lost 35% of my retirement.
Yeah.
There's no way. It's impossible. Now I got to work for several years to make that back. But then we basically went V mode, and it was straight down and straight up. And then maybe a couple months later, you're like, oh, I can retire now. I'm good. But if you de-risk yourself prior to, this is again why I say, like, I think, somewhere 57, 58 range years old, and you're able to dial that back a little bit. It gives you a little bit of a safety net to where it doesn't necessarily matter as much about what the markets do, because you've kind of already made your money and you're kind of just coasting at that point.
Yeah.
It really comes into greed when what that plays a role into as well as, like, once you get to 57, 58, and maybe you've been compounding your funds for 20 years, and you're like, dude, I am making freaking bank right now. It is hard to try and dial. I would assume it would be hard to dial that back and basically be like, you know what? I'm going to take a little bit less over the next 5 to 7 years so that I know that I make it at 65. Whereas you could be like, man, I am compounding like a mofo right now. I'm making bank. If I do this for another 5 to 7 years, I'm going to be rich as hell come 65. But also, you run that risk of, a bear market or recession hitting at 64. And now you're like, I'm screwed.
Yeah, now I got to work till 69.
Yeah, now I got to work. Now I got to spend another 5 years in the workforce when I could have just put my money safely somewhere else and, been good.
Yeah. I mean, yes, I think there's a lot of things that traditional finance, it in my opinion, it just seems like the old, like, I picture traditional finance as that old white dude that's just so they're like, ha, 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 ha. And everything is catered to that class of individual, and they're very slow to change, and they are set in their ways. And I mean, it's just the definition of a boomer, I guess you could say. And I think what a lot of people are missing is that there are a shitload of third world countries that are going to be boosted up to second world countries. And there's second world countries that are going to be boosted up to first world countries because of DeFi. And there are ways that we're not even talking about here. There are ways that maybe nobody's talking about now because it doesn't exist, but still there's opportunity there. And I think where the US is really lagging behind is they're not seeing the bigger picture, or maybe perhaps they do see the bigger picture. They're playing a game of chess and I'm over here thinking about checkers or whatever. I personally think though that they have made shitloads of cash as is in traditional finance. And they're like, we need to milk this as far as we can milk it. Why would we want to go to DeFi? And these other third world, second world countries, of course, they're going to go to DeFi because it makes the most sense for that individual. Like for somebody who is a multimillionaire in the US, decentralized finance is not a good idea. In fact, it is quite the opposite. Now, for philanthropists, for people like Bill Gates or Elon Musk, even though I know they kind of butt heads with each other, but they seem to be, at least for their personas, for the people, of course, they're going to push these initiatives. And when we see Elon all the time talking about crypto.
Always.
But realistically, I mean, I'm a fan of Elon in some ways, but I'm not a fan in other ways. But when it comes to like his pursuit of crypto, I'm surprised that he pushes it so heavily because for people in his shoes, it is the absolute worst case scenario because it opens up more opportunity for more people to create wealth. And as more wealth comes in, that's actually bad for societies. A more educated society, financially wise, is terrible for your country because now it's like, okay, well, I mean, really, if you think about traditional finance, it kind of preys on the lower income individuals. Like we need janitors, we need plumbers, we need people who can't go to school, that have to mow our lawns. I mean, you could equate it back to the peasants and the medieval times with the kings and the queens and the monarchs and whatnot. But I mean, ultimately, it's kind of the same. It's gatekeeping and it's traditional finance saying like, no, you cannot get through this gate because of X, Y, Z. And DeFi is like, you know what? We're going to let you through this gate. And it could be great and it could be bad. And the US right now is saying like, look, there's way more bad than good. Trust us, stay with traditional finance. And the people who are making shitloads of cash are like, yeah, fuck crypto and all this other shit.
Yep.
But the majority of the people are like, well, I don't really know where I should fall here. And really where they should fall is crypto because it ultimately opens up the market for everybody and it creates this free market and it creates so many opportunities for people to invest that have never had the opportunity to invest before.
Yeah, I mean, the problem that presents right now, at least from the U.S. side of things, is the U.S. is trying to lock it down as much as possible, but they're trying to kind of like do what you said. They don't want everybody to be financially stable and be making money because it's not really good for society because then, those lower tier jobs and things like that is, become not available or not of interest to people because they already have money. So they're like, well, I don't need to do this anymore to make money because I can make money, over here or over there. So through crypto. So, it's going to be very interesting the next few years and what that landscape looks like. And it's going to also be very interesting once the U.S. really harkens in on the regulation side of things and what that does for the U.S. and how that impacts other countries. I mean, I do think some of these other countries are definitely getting wealthy pretty heavily off of crypto. Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, the more the U.S. restricts it in the U.S., the more it bolsters the wealth in the other countries. I mean, I think a lot of the bigger exchanges that are within crypto currently are in China. And most of those countries and the amount they're making in fees is insane. And a lot of that money that they're making in fees is off the people in the U.S. So a lot of the wealth transfer or the money transfer is going from the U.S. into China. So it's very interesting how that's going to play out over the next several years. And I think the U.S. has kind of a time limit on it. They have a a timestamp of like, we got to figure this out, and we got to figure this out relatively quickly, because we got people that are trading in the US and they're trading on a Binance or, one of these other exchanges that is, Chinese based, and they're just giving money to that country.
Yeah.
And bolstering that country, and it's getting more and more money from the crypto side of things. And then on the US side, it's basically taking a loss from people losing money, or just, the Chinese companies collecting fees on the trades that end up taking place, things like that. So it's going to be very interesting to see what things look like in the next, 12 to 18 months or 12 to 24 months, to see where things go on the US side of things and what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be interesting, and it's crazy to think about too, because I mean, for the most part, it's the lower income to lower middle class people who are really diving into crypto because they see the biggest opportunity, whereas they're also the ones that are losing the most. The people who are making the most kind of money. And we talked about this in the last episode with Mark Cuban, how he's invested in so many different crypto projects, even though he's probably taken more single losses than, majority of crypto, his wins are probably massive.
Huge.
I mean, he's probably made so much in Bitcoin, so much in Ethereum, and, kudos to him. Good for him. I want people to have that opportunity, whether you're a billionaire or a $2-naire, right? Like, it doesn't matter to me. I think that is what DeFi is great for. It's just, unfortunately, we see this, time and time again, but it's just like most of the people who are struggling in life, they make the biggest bets and they tend to take the biggest wins and the biggest losses overall. It's not consistent. It's not safe by any means. But yes, to your point, I think what the US is doing is it's encouraging all these hardworking Americans to say, well, now I got to trust my money with, China, Singapore, Brazil, whatever, to do the right thing. And historically, as we've seen, not a lot of those exchanges do the right thing. I will
Usually
say
not.
With Binance, I don't know, man. I got a good feeling about
I
CZ.
do not. No.
I do. So my biggest pet peeve is, or I don't know if it's a pet peeve or what, but it's China. I think that it doesn't matter how great CZ is. It doesn't matter how great Binance is. At the end of the day, this is China. If China was like, no, we're shutting this down and we're taking everybody's money, there is nothing anybody can do.
True.
Nothing CZ could throw up fours all day long. It doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah.
And that to me is the biggest problem with Binance, which is huge. But I do believe that CZ and Binance itself, probably the employees, the company, whatever, have I think they think that they're doing the right thing for crypto. I just don't know if it is.
No chance.
You don't think so?
No chance.
Man,
I think
dog.
I think every exchange is doing shady shit. I think it's happening in traditional finance as well. I think crypto and traditional finance, shady stuff is happening all the time. Whether that is actually CZ or employees within the company, whether that's insider trading information, whether that's manipulation, market making side of things, all that kind of stuff. There's so many ways that these companies can do back-end related things that nobody can really see that could generate them large amounts of money really quickly.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. If I'm an employee at a exchange or Binance, whatever, I've got 3 kids and I know I'm barely meeting, ends meet, and my kid needs new clothes or this, he wants that, I don't care, or we want to go on a trip, and I suddenly get the opportunity of some inside information. Am I taking it? Probably yes.
100%.
Because what am I? I'm like, oh, am I screwing over, these billionaires? Like, fuck those billionaires, right? Like, you're going to take that, and even though it's not the right thing to do, and even though I know that it's not the right thing to do, and I'm saying like, oh, I'd probably do it, I know that shitloads of other people are doing it.
100%. I mean, it's definitely happening. And I mean, like, you got to think I'm assuming most of the exchanges have access to a lot of information. They can see all kinds of different order flows before most people can see them. I'm sure they can see, the amount of money that's flowing into a specific asset more or less than other ones, especially like when it comes to altcoins. I'm like, dude, if some of these people are able to see, when money's flowing into a specific altcoin before everybody else, I'm like, they could be easily hopping on that. And like I said, there's probably a ton of different avenues that I'm not even thinking of because I'm not in the inner workings of the exchanges where they can take advantage of it. And in my opinion, I think this is happening in traditional finance. This isn't just a knock on crypto, or this isn't just a knock on Binance. This is every exchange in crypto. I think there's shady operations that go on. And then on the stock side, I wouldn't be surprised if the same operations go on, whether it's Robinhood or TD Ameritrade or Schwab or E-Trade or Fidelity. I think the same shit is going on. It's just all under wraps. And I guess on the blockchain, it's a little bit more visual and potentially trackable maybe, but I don't even think from that standpoint, I don't think it is that much either. But I don't trust any exchange, traditional finance, crypto, anything. I think it's all like they're all doing shady shit. Now, that doesn't mean any of them are going to go down, and that doesn't mean I'm not going to use them. It just means that I think every one of them is taking advantage of the information that they are able to receive on a regular basis, and they are using it to benefit themselves.
Absolutely. I mean, Nancy Pelosi.
Easy.
Like, come on. This is somebody who has everything but wants more. And if you take that individual and you put, somebody who has nothing and needs more in their mindset, right? Of course, they're going to do some of the things that they probably shouldn't be doing.
Yeah,
and
greed is a hell of a drug, man. It's
exactly.
You just never get enough. Some people can never get enough, and then they just sometimes it works out to their benefit. Other times they end up getting caught in their little scheme, and next thing you know, they're doing jail time.
Yeah, I mean, money changes people. We've talked about this plenty of times, especially when we look at projects and we see like, these rugs, and when we revisited node season, it's like, okay, we're going to change everything. And all of a sudden they're like, we got $2 million in our treasury. Like we could take this and pay off our house. Blah, blah. People make, change, and it's the characters. And even though I know, like we've probably had many opportunities where we could have created something and screwed people over
easily.
But I truly believe in ourselves of being like, I want to do this the right way. I am a believer in karma, and I don't want anything to come back and bite me in the ass. But there are people, and like I said, if I was super struggling and I worked at Binance and I had information, for example, like, maybe we're about to list a Pepe or a Doge or a Sheep, and I'm like, oh shit, in 5 days, we're about to put this on Binance. Maybe I just buy a shitload of this beforehand.
Happens all the time, I bet.
Yeah. I mean, it's pump and dumps. And I think shitloads of companies are doing pump and dumps. And I think it is for absolute sure it is happening in traditional finance 100 million%. I would bet my life on it. Like,
yep.
It is really easy when you boil it down. I just think that the average person making life-changing money on it in traditional finance versus crypto is exponentially harder.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's guaranteed. Like the volatility is nowhere and remotely close to the same. So there's no way you're going to be in traditional finance and make anything remotely close to what you would do in crypto.
Yeah. So, I mean, we basically hashed out traditional finance versus decentralized finance pretty much as entire almost an hour that we've been talking about it. But as we expand more, I know a big, huge topic, not only for BreadBytes, but in general for just bot trading and really overall trading in general is trade logs. Like, first and foremost, I think is absolutely important that if you are a trader, regardless if you're getting automated signals through a bot or trade alerts through another trader, you should definitely keep a trade log. And so as a strategist, you have to keep a trade log.
100%. I mean, whether it's a trade log, even getting further granular in it, I think a trade journal is even further where you're able. This is getting more into manual trading, and when you're as a learning as a trader and things like that, you need to be able to log, a win and a loss, and be able to identify on the win, what did you do well, and on the loss, what did you do well. If you're on the automated side and maybe trading a bot like what we have at BreadBytes, you should be keeping very close track of what your profit and loss looks like and things like that. And this is something that we take very seriously. And that's why we have built out our trade log so expansively. And we've, built out a website for it. And we put timestamps for our entries and timestamps for our exits and P&L results and a profit loss chart and all that kind of stuff. So our users can see it and they can verify it and they can do all of that, because it is extremely important. I think, one of the things that I learned when I was first starting out as a trader is I didn't realize how much keeping track of my trades helped me in my trades. I didn't even really think about it that much. I'm like, it's kind of almost like thinking about, a lot of people don't realize this either, but kind of getting a little bit off topic, but like tracking your budget helps you with spending and saving money much better than it does. But you might think, oh, my bank statements do that. I can look at my app and see how much I've spent or lost or whatever. Yes, you can. But if you're actually tracking it manually or automated through some sort of a system and you're consistently looking at it, you have a better visualization of like, oh shit, I've been spending a lot of money lately compared to how much I've been making. And same goes for trading. And then you get to a point where you're like, man, I need to budget this better. I can't spend money on this because I'm making this. And if I spend money on that, it's going to put me over budget, things like that. And trading goes the same way. Like when you take a loss on a trade, you're like, if you had just been like, Robinhood or whatever application I use shows me my, trade and shows me if I made money or lost money. But if you're actually looking at your losses and be like, oh, I lost because of this, or I won because of this, or man, I've won several trades in a row by doing this, all that stuff really helps you as a trader to identify how to be better at it. And then from an automated standpoint for our trading bots, being able to consistently understand, what's working well and what's not working well. We talked about that a lot in our last episode of when to cut a bot strategy. If you're very in tune with your trade logs and you're able to verify the trade logs from the strategist, it makes it a little bit easier for you to understand the kind of and paint the story and the picture of like what this looks like over a month, what this looks like over 3 months, what this looks like over 6 months, and further data from there. So I think it's absolutely crucial for you to be in tune with this. I really draw the conclusion similar to a budget. Like if you consistently are keeping track of your own money from a budget standpoint, you usually are better at spending and better at saving. And same with trading. If you are consistently looking at your wins and losses, you end up ultimately being better at trading overall and generally make more money when you're more in tune with it.
Yeah. 100%. When I think about when I was day trading pretty heavily, my trade log really involved like emotions, things that happened during the time. Like, I would even document, like if my wife and I had gotten into a fight and then I ended up taking a trade. It's like, that does have an impact on my mindset. Or, if something, happened in the market, I would want to, document that. It didn't even matter. Whatever happened during the day, if you document it, it may or may not make a difference later on. When you go back and you look at your trades from 3 months from now, it's like, oh, okay, well, oh yeah, on that day I had a really, big fight with my wife. It's like, okay, I probably shouldn't be trading on those days.
True.
Or if I'm already in a trade, it's like, okay, well, I can't properly execute a close on this. I should just take a small loss or I should take a small win. And I think people are, I really like your example of the budget because it is true. Most people think like, okay, well, let's say I make $100,000 a year. It's like, okay, well, my expenses are like, half that. It doesn't even matter. Like my car payment's like $800. My house was like $2,600. And then, I just kind of go spend here a little. And then you start to dive into it. It's like a budget. You're like, oh shit, I'm spending $2,000 at the grocery store. I'm spending $800 at Chick-fil-A. Like,
Yeah.
what the hell? Like,
Yeah.
why am I going to Chick-fil-A so much if I'm also spending a whole shitload of money at, my grocery store? It's like, okay, this just helps paint this, the picture of what is actually happening. And I think the biggest challenge of people signing onto a budget is they're afraid. They're afraid to see exactly what reality is. And I think as a trader, you want to be the best trader in the world. And this goes back to our previous episode with herd mentality. It's like you're trying to compete with the next trader. You're trying to be like, oh, you got 100% gainer. We're like, I got 200%.
Exactly.
Oh, you got 200%. We'll check this 1000% gainer out. It's like, hey, motherfucker, you just took 9,000% in losses just to show this 1,000%.
Yeah.
Like, the fuck? So I think overall, if you have a trade journal, and if you're truly trying to be a professional trader must have some sort of key performing metrics to abide by, right? Like if you I mentioned this as well, like in the previous episode, if you're your own boss and you look at your performance, do you give yourself a raise? Do you promote yourself? Or do you say, hey, you know what? You're not really doing the job that we hired you for. Perhaps you need to, do X, Y, Z. And having a trade log is that X, Y, Z. It allows you to see exactly where your areas of opportunity are. It allows you to see, and when I say trade log, I mean trade journal. It allows you to see exactly where your areas of opportunity are and your areas of successes. And it allows you to be like, taking advantage of those, like, okay, wow, I performed the greatest on Wednesdays from, 12 to 3.
Right.
Then fucking only trade Wednesdays 12 to 3.
Exactly. People get impatient though.
Yeah.
The impatience is part of it. But yeah, I mean, I think you can really, really become a very good trader if you're able to identify and log all that information and then take that information after you've done it for several months and determine what is the most beneficial to you. Like you said, like maybe there's a certain day of the week, maybe there's a certain time of the day that you're consistently like, man, I'm killing it at this time of day.
Yeah.
And at this specific time of day or this specific day of the week, I suck. Or maybe the market just doesn't play well with my strategy on this day of the week. And so I'm just like, well, I probably shouldn't just trade that day. That kind of goes into what we do with our data analytics. And, some of our strategies, we don't trade on Sundays. And we realize that the data, a lot of Sundays when it comes to crypto is just like the market can just like pump for no reason on like super low volume. It can dump for no reason on super low volume. From a technical analysis standpoint, it's kind of all willy-nilly. So some of our strategies, we've determined like, you know what, the strategy actually isn't it behooves us to not allow it to trade on Sundays because of the data that we have, which essentially is our trade journal, which essentially has identified that, realistically, we lose money on this specific day of the week whenever you trade this. So, it helps our community in that sense. But, I think trade journals and trade logs are super beneficial to anybody that's trading. Like I said, I equate it to a budget and logging that information because at the end of the day, you really can get a really good visualization of like what works well, what doesn't work well, and how to continue forward. And that's where the great traders excel and the poor traders, fail, is because the great traders are analyzing that data and taking that information from their logs and their journals and applying it to make themselves better. And the others are just, looking at their P&L and realizing that they're up or down and then just kind of winging it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to put down any other strategists that, realistically are, I guess some people will be like, oh, that's your competition, whatever. Okay, it doesn't matter. I think that BreadBytes as itself, we have a better trade log system. And I think it's because not only do we come from this, previous trading experience and with, alert services and whatnot, but we've created a passive income tracker. We've encouraged people to have a trade journal. And when you constantly are preaching, hey, have a trade journal, naturally you're going to have a trade journal yourself. And like you said, our trade journal is our trade logs, and our trade logs have evolved significantly since day one to now. I mean, pretty much now we have devised or created a system that almost allows anybody to take any logs that they have from their exchange and put them into a dashboard so that they can clearly identify what truly they're seeing. I mean, when you see data, numbers on a screen, sometimes those numbers look at you and they're like, it makes sense. But most of the time, it takes a graph, it takes a picture to be like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I thought things were going great, but really it's like I'm drowning right now. And we've seen it many times before. And again, if you can expand upon not only just taking our word, like for our subscribers, like if I had to send a message out to all of our subscribers, don't just take our trade logs or even your exchange trade logs as fact. I mean, yes, in a way it is fact. It's a fact of your money, but also journal what was happening on those days. That when you notice a loss, think about like, okay, why did this bot take a loss? As a user, you might not be able to answer that because you don't know how the strategy performed, but you could analyze the market and you could say, oh, well, CPI was delivered or FOMC, or maybe, there was huge news about, a bombing here or whatever. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is, if it's abnormal, document it, because if it's something that could be tracked, you might then be able to manage your trading, regardless, again, if it's a bot or your own trading. You could manage it better and you could say, okay, well, I've noticed that the bot has taken a loss every single Thursday that I've traded. Anytime the bot enters a trade on a Thursday, I'm just going to cut it.
Yeah.
You might end up saving yourself money.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad idea. I mean, a good example of that is Cinnamon Toast recently. It's had a little bit of a rough stretch, and 2 of the 3 recent losses were due to this Binance SEC craziness as happened, that has, kind of tanked the market as of late. I know Bitcoin's dropped about $2,000. Ethereum's dropped $100 plus. We had that one night where all of the altcoins dropped like 20%. And 2 of the 3 losses just happened to be situations where Cinnamon Toast entered a long trade, and then more information came out about this Binance SEC situation and the SEC cracking down on these other exchanges in the US, and some of these exchanges liquidating their funds. And in those situations, it's just like, kind of is what it is. It's just like, bot took a trade, news came out after we were in it. Yeah, kind of is what it is. Those ones I'm not like, I don't get too bent out of shape about, because it's just like, couldn't really do much about that situation. Even if I personally was like, this is a good long entry, and then a few minutes later, some news came out that tanked the market. It's like, what are you gonna do? It's just, you follow your plan, and sometimes it doesn't work out. That's why there's no, traders out there that have 100% win rates, because there's always variability in different conditions that can happen within the market. But if you're able to document that kind of stuff, then you can kind of justify, okay, this was a good loss, I guess you could say, or a bad loss. Maybe there's just a regular trade that gets taken and you're like, this wasn't really a good entry, shouldn't have taken it, or whatever, XYZ reason. You can justify it. And then maybe there's some that are unjustified, where you took a long or a short or whatever, and then the market has some news out and it did the opposite of what you were already in. And it's just, in those situations, you just kind of throw your hands up and you're just like, this is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, as a strategist, and I'm sure you feel the same way, we're stuck, right? Like, we have to leave the bots. I mean, theoretically, we have to leave the bots operating 24/7, unless there's like some sort of error or something that's crazy happening. For the most part, our responsibility is just leave the bots on. And I remember, I don't know if it was DeFi Salt Dog or somebody, he had said something like, the TA for the week was pointing down, and I'm like, I'm in agreement of that. The technical analysis did indicate that yes, we probably should be going short, and if the bot happens to take a long, which Cinnamon Toast did take a long, right? Because it's a long only bot, and it was buying off of a pullback. It's like, okay, well, if you're keeping a trade journal yourself, a very thorough trade journal, I get this is contradictory to what we say, so it again is tough, but we are put into this box where it's like, we have to leave the bots on. But if you are keeping a trade journal yourself and you are fully in tune into your trades, whether that is you executing those or a bot or whomever, if you understand the market yourself and you have a feeling that this is not a good trade, at the end of the day, you're in control of that. You can take your bot off the market. You could cut your trades. You could do this, that, or whatever. At the end of the day, I think our goal with BreadBytes has always been to not only provide people with successful strategies, but help people learn how to trade. And at the end of the day, the bots do not know sentiment. The bots do not know emotions. That's the greatest and the worst thing about a bot. The greatest thing about a bot is it trades emotionless. And that historically, 80% of the time, people fail off of emotions. That's why I think long-term bots could be successful, but I don't want to discredit any emotions. I mean, shoot, there's been plenty of times where our bot has taken a trade and both of us are like, I don't think this is a great idea. Sometimes it has gone in our favor.
True.
And then sometimes it's like, holy shit, I can't believe this pulled it out. It's a coin toss. And if you think about every trade as a coin toss, then it really is a coin toss. But if you think of every trade and you start breaking down the actual economics of it, the macro of the situation, you've started to document what is the overall sentiment of not only just maybe crypto Twitter, but just the world, the economics in general, what is happening? Is there anything, whatever, it doesn't even matter. I mean, I've seen people's trades logs where they track the weather, it's raining really hard. I'm not going to take a trade today. I mean, I don't know if there's anything into that, but
yeah, it's a little far-fetched for me.
I appreciate that somebody is tracking that, and you never know, man. I mean, there's probably so many common similarities across all these different trading styles that, we probably don't even know. And so
yeah,
that's where a trade journal and a trade logs are extremely important, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of going back to what you were saying about, Cinnamon Toast specifically, and, what people were saying about the potential downtrend and things like that. I mean, it's tough because Cinnamon Toast is designed as a scalping strategy. So it's not really a longer term or longer time frame strategy to where any of that really matters. I mean, if you go back and you look at August to December, Cinnamon Toast did really, really well. But if you look at Ethereum, I mean, Ethereum went from $1,800 or $1,900 down to $1,000. So this thing cut itself in half, 50%, but Cinnamon Toast was relatively strong throughout that, 4 or 5 month period. And it's a lot of people could say, oh, well, we were in a downtrend. Why would you take a long? But, there's trade opportunities throughout that all the way through. So, it's kind of a balance that you have to understand and identify and, realize that hey, if you're trading a specific strategy that is designed to be in and out over a relatively short amount of time, the longer term trend really doesn't necessarily matter all that much. Yes, we may be in a downtrend overall, but there can still be, long opportunities even within that. Same with the uptrend. If there's an uptrend that's happening and you're like, man, market's pumping right now, there are still short opportunities within that if they're well timed and well placed based off of technical analysis, fundamental analysis, market analysis, sentiment, whatever it may be, that you're going off of. So there's still opportunities within opportunities that can, be taking place. It's just a matter of trying to identify, where those lie, and then identify and understanding that, you don't want to get yourself boxed into a specific thing and say, hey, market's in a downtrend for the next week, I'm only shorting.
Yeah.
That may not necessarily ultimately be the best play at the end of the day, because there could be long opportunities within that, and you're boxing yourself into one side of a strategy based off the overall trend, whereas within that trend, there's opportunities to go the other route. So it doesn't necessarily mean that one way or the other is better than either way, but I think you have to really come in with a super open mindset. The more closed off you are to different ideas, the worse you're going to be as a trader, because you kind of start putting yourself in this more niche box. And then at that point, you can only trade these very, very specific situations because you've boxed yourself in so much. And if those situations don't go well, and they don't come up very often, you really screw yourself. And that's what I see a lot of traders end up doing, is they based off their mistakes, they box themselves in further and further and further to where they take a very few amount of trades, and then if those trades don't go the way they want, then they end up in a net loss.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm just about to contradict myself so hard, but at the end of the day, I think when you're trading professionally, you need to understand that you are absolutely 100% going to take losses. Taking a loss, look at that as a successful trade. You've learned something from it. Yeah, of course, if we could have a 100% win rate, I would take that every single day. At the end of the day, I think when our bots have a higher percent win rate, my biggest gripe is when people are saying, well, the losses outweigh the wins. It's like, okay, well, you're coming in from a 30, 60, 90-day period. If you think long term, right? Okay, maybe we had an unusual amount of losses right at the beginning or right at the end or in the middle, whatever. It doesn't even matter. But if you think long term, if this win-loss rate holds strong, then it doesn't matter because the amount of wins are going to compound higher than the losses. I do understand that timing is everything. You might happen to come in and take 3 losses back to back. And of course, it will take a longer amount of time to get back into the profit. But that's where, like I said, where if you're taking more wins over losses, then it'll be okay. But yes, I think when people experience losses, whether that's through a bot or manual trading, it changes everything for them. And they have to know that if you just look at a loss as like, okay, I am going to take a loss. Today I'm going to take a loss. And then if you don't take the loss that day and you take a win, it's like, cool. Every day you should know that you're going to probably take a loss. You are essentially gambling with the house here. And if you go to Vegas and you are gambling in their casino, there are people that make millions of dollars in that casino. There are people who make thousands of dollars. There are people who, play all week and come out break even. But there are also people that play one time stupidly and lose everything.
Yep.
So the house knows that overall, in the long run, yes, they are going to reward certain amount of people, but overall, their statistics, their win-loss rate is in their favor. So they can afford to take these massive losses, small losses, medium losses, this, that, or whatever, and know that in the end, they're going to win. So if a trader has that same mindset, and they are, especially if they're journaling their, journey, I think they're going to be okay.
Agreed.
I really do.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, they will come out ahead. The ones that actually put in the work and the effort to learn trading, learn technical analysis, document their trade logs, build out a trade journal, learn from their mistakes, all that kind of stuff. Those are the ones that make it, and that's a small percentage. That's why most of the time they always say 90% or plus 90% plus of traders fail, is because they don't really want to put in the work for a lot of that stuff. They'll learn technical analysis at the beginning, but then they won't follow up on it continually. It's an ever changing space. You have to consistently learn new indicators, and you need to learn from your existing strategies and what they do well and what they don't do well, and then you need to fine tune the areas that they don't do well to try and make them do better. And then you need to be able to identify and log your trades and make sure that you're identifying, like, okay, on this specific loss, XYZ thing happened. Is there a way for me to prevent this in the future without screwing up my existing strategy or thoughts or feelings on how I handle trading? And I think a lot of people just aren't able or interested in putting in the effort to do that on a day-to-day basis, and that's why most traders fail, because they don't consistently evolve and build amongst the skill set that they originally started with, and then over time the market just kind of passes them by.
Yeah, I mean, couldn't say it better. I think it's time to move on to some BreadBytes developments. I know we just launched the V2 buffer. Would you like to explain that to everybody?
Yeah, so we have this buffer functionality. It's similar to, it's kind of our own take and our own spin on a trailing stop loss strategy. So essentially what our strategies have is this buffer functionality where price hits a specific target buffer point that we have within our strategy. And at that point, the trade is locked in for profit. The stop loss moves up into profit levels. And what the V2 buffer does is it offers, originally our V1 buffer was very static. So we had a specific percentage point where the buffer would trigger, and then once that buffer triggered, we would have a specific percentage point where the next buffer would trigger, and a specific percentage point where the trailing stop loss would move. And then once the next buffer was trigger, the trailing stop loss would move up that X percentage point. And it was very static in the way the V1 buffer worked. The V2 buffer has some more dynamicness to it, some more intelligence to it, to where when those buffer levels end up getting hit, we have, functionality that's tracking price action and tracking volatility and tracking volume and identifying those things. And based off of those scenarios, the trailing stop loss will tighten or loosen based off of the scenarios that are specifically happening. So essentially, on a strategy like we have with Cosmic Cupcake, where it's on Atom and that asset moves significantly, 2, 3, 4, 5% a day, based off the volatility of that asset, the stop loss, once it's triggered into profit, it may move or tighten itself as closer to the existing price based off of how price action is moving and based off of how volatility ends up taking place within the market on that given day. So I think this is, in my opinion, this is V2, but I think there's a lot of functionality that we can add to this in the long run. I think there's a lot of stuff that we've talked about quite a bit. In my opinion, our buffer functionality is a pretty exciting feature and a feature that we can build upon extensively, and something that could wildly change our overall performance of our strategies as we continue to build it out, as we continue to build dynamic features into it and functionality and all this kind of stuff. I think there's a lot to it that could ultimately get us to a point of just really locking in super high win rates, locking in consistent profits for everybody on a regular basis, being able to capture the maximum amount of wins that we can squeeze out of a trade. So although this is V2, I think there's a lot of work that we're still continuing to work on to build this out even further. I'm excited for this next step in the buffer functionality, but I really do think that if we can really ultimately get this to the place that we want it to be, it can really be a huge, huge feature that is, sets us apart, amongst everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about V2, I think that, when we kind of created V1, we kind of had V2 in mind.
Mm-hmm.
It just took a little bit longer to get there, and I'm super excited. I wish we could talk more about some of the things that, we've pitched to Alexa and things that she's working on. I strongly hope that she's able to do those things, because ultimately at the end of the day, and we tell everybody this, is your success is our success. We want to provide wins. At the end of the day, if we're beating the market, I consider that a win. And as long as people are profitable, I consider that a win. So we tend to make our strategies a little bit safer for crypto, right? It might not be truly safe, but while we do that, we don't want to harm ourselves in missing trades or leaving, profit on the table. And I'm super excited for what the buffer has to offer, I know we have a lot in store, but there's as much as exciting that is, there is some depressing news. And I know I'm rocking this T-shirt because it's got French toast on it, but for
R.I.P. baby,
for everybody who was subscribed to French toast, I'm sorry, you're no longer subscribed to French toast. It is tough. BTC is tough to trade. It's not like any other asset. It's a currency. And when we look at our strategy, when volatility, again, we rely on volatility. And when there's a lot of volatility in Bitcoin, we did the best. But for the most part, it's kind of just kind of dull. It doesn't make a lot of trades. It didn't have very much action. I mean, I remember our original French toast strategy, which was very closely related to cinnamon toast just for Bitcoin. It didn't perform very well at all. And we had to retire that. We brought in a newer version, one that longed and shorted, kind of mimicked shortbread a little bit. And it saw some success again. Once there was volatility in the market, we were able to be very successful. And then we quickly learned, like, when there's no volatility,
Gets chopped up.
Yes. And it's not like for instance, cinnamon toast performs the best in bearish and kind of sideways markets.
Yeah.
Cosmic performs the absolute best in sideways and down markets. French toast really only performed in extremely high volatility markets. It was unlike any other strategy. It was very hard and, it was a tough decision we had to make. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to be the last time people are going to see French toast, I would like to say. But
I'd agree with that.
I think that the strategy that everybody knows right now, it was for the best to retire it. And I think, message to every strategist out there is there is going to be strategies that you have, and there are going to be tough decisions that you have to make. And again, if you look at your strategies as employees, and if an employee is not performing and you have to make a decision, do I terminate this, employment with this employee? It's never going to be an easy decision.
Yeah, it's not a fun conversation to have.
Exactly. You're going to have to make some tough calls. And that was a tough call. And it wasn't the first time we've done it. We did it with Blueberry Muffin. It was our AVAX bot. But those were necessary decisions to ensure that our user base is making money. We don't want to just be a cash cow here and charging people money for things that aren't working. We want to make sure that people who invest in us actually have an opportunity to make some true passive income. And so, yes, we had to make the tough decision. RIP French toast. Hopefully, though, like as the end of an Avengers movie, that after credit scene pops up and it says, French toast will return.
We back, baby.
We back, baby.
Yeah, I
Smart
think,
hold.
Bitcoin is just it's a real pain in the ass to trade, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I don't trade Bitcoin. I mean, I hold Bitcoin, but I don't trade it actively because it's just really hard to get a real good read. Whether you're a, trend trader or a momentum trader, or whatever kind of trader you are, Bitcoin is a real giant pain in the ass to trade.
Absolutely.
Out of all the coins that I've ever traded, it is really hard to get a real good gauge on what you think is going to happen, or what you think is going to happen never ends up taking place. Ethereum, I think it's really not that hard to trade. Ethereum is very, it respects what it's supposed to respect, especially from a technical analysis standpoint. Bitcoin, shit is willy-nilly, man. That thing does whatever the hell it wants, whenever it wants. And I know some of you may be like, well, whatever Bitcoin does, Ethereum follows. And to an extent, yes, that's accurate, but it's usually to a lower extent. A lot of times Bitcoin, maybe Bitcoin's up 0.5% and, Ethereum is up 1.5%, or, Bitcoin is down 1% and Ethereum's down 2.5%. So it's just a little bit of bigger moves, and Bitcoin it's just weird. And the way we have our strategy set up just didn't really play well. We've tried 2 or 3 different versions of Bitcoin with French toast and brought it out in various factors, and just every single one of them just didn't live up to the expectations that we had, for our strategy. So ultimately, again, like Mike said, we're not in it for a cash grab, and at the end of the day, there's no point in selling a strategy to people and having them pay for something that's not making them money. So, ultimately we had to cut it. I think at some point in time we're going to hit on something with Bitcoin, and we'll be able to re-release this, Bitcoin strategy in the future. But, in the time being, we just had to axe it, and, we'll go back to the drawing board on it and see what we can figure out down the road.
Yeah. And as we remove one strategy, we do have some good news. And I think, for me, our Doge strategy has always had a special place in my heart. I know we've been testing on the back end for a lot longer than it's been in alpha strategies. It has been a pretty solid performing.
Very good.
But my God, this thing has been killing it. What I like about Doge is that it was the first. I mean, it's our I would say in between. It's not quite to the level of swing trading that some of our other strategies down the line may feature, but it's a good in between. And what I mean by that is it allows people the opportunity to enter and exit. And we see a lot of people who manually trade this right now get in and out of trades with some nice profit. And so a big question has been, when is the Doge bot coming? And I know you and I have talked about this publicly, that we do not want to release a whole bunch of strategies and flood our user base with so many options. But we got something pretty exciting coming, and I wish we could share it all right here. But I think
Soon.
we can, yes, not only soon, I think we can leave people with the understanding that an automated version of Doge is coming. And I think you're going to like it.
Yeah, I agree. I think everybody's going to be pretty excited about what we have cooking and the way we're going to roll it out and, all that kind of stuff. I know personally I'm excited. I'm itching to get this thing, out there and in people's hands and things like that. And, I think this strategy, I can't remember exactly what the number is, but I'm pretty sure we've done, since we rolled it out in alpha back in April, I'm pretty sure this thing has done somewhere between 20 and 25% no leverage. So, and it's been pretty freaking dynamite since we rolled it out in alpha. And then me and you have been trading it prior to that. And it's been really good as well. So I'm really excited to get this in people's hands and allow people to trade Doge. I know, Doge is a little bit of an obscure-ish situation. It's kind of like this weird coin where it's like it's in the top 20 market cap, but it really doesn't really do anything. It's just a meme coin. But it has a presence, and it's a huge presence in crypto. So
I mean, top 20, I think it's top 10.
I'm pretty sure it is top 10. I think it's like 7.
I think so,
I think it's like 6 or 7. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm really excited to roll this out. I'm excited for this strategy. I'm excited for the way that we're going to roll it out. It's going to be a little bit unique. Yeah. Kind of as we always do with BreadBytes, kind of being the front runners and the at the forefront of the way we think and kind of seeing around corners and things like that. So I'm excited to be able to deliver this to everybody whenever the time is right. But yeah, I'm really excited for this strategy. It's unique in the way it works. It's unique in the coin that we're trading. It's unique in the way that we're going to roll it out. So it's going to be a little bit of a game changer for us.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we've already rolled this out by the time this episode comes out. So it's going to be interesting for people to listen to this and be like, "Oh snap, they did it!" and they talked about it right here.
Yeah,
and I'm interested to see what some of these other strategists are going to think about our moves, and ultimately at the end of the day, for all of our users, I know that at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're holding true to our mission statement. We're here to save people time, we're here to save people money, and we're here to make people money. And that is what BreadBytes is about. And I think that is what BreadBytes will always be about. I certainly hope so. That is how I envision it in myself.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's been our mission statement since before we started. Yeah. Was all right. These are the 3 things, in my opinion. These are like the 3 pillars of a way to build a successful company. 3 things that people want. They want to be able to save money. They want to be able to save time, and they want to be able to make money. And if we can do all 3 of those or any of the 3 of those, I think we've accomplished at least some of our goals and making, people either allowing them to make money through us, save money through us, or save their time through us. And I think, we're able to do all of those things. They're potentially able to save money through our, not, buying into shit coins or trading themselves, which may, incur emotions, things like that. They save time because the automation of the strategies allows them to, make money while they're sleeping. And then obviously they make money off the strategies, generating a profit on a month-over-month basis. So, we'll continue to strive for those goals and continue to try and put out a quality product. And, I think, we'll just kind of keep growing from there.
Yeah. Heck yeah. And I mean, I think this has been a successful episode. I think this is a great point, where we can leave off. Again, if you'd like to, you can follow the crumbs on our socials at Baking Profits, at BreadBytes, at Breadmaker, at DeFi Donut. And again, we appreciate you tuning in. Have a great day.
Catch you on the next one. Peace.